You've probably heard the term environmental storytelling a lot when it comes to video games. Perhaps a friend mentioned it when talking about their favorite game, or you heard it in a YouTube video of some kind. Whatever the case, do you truly know what it means when a game uses environmental storytelling? Your answer is probably something along the lines of, yeah, it's when the game uses the environment to tell the story. Now, that's a fine answer, but it doesn't tell the full story of how truly complex the topic really is. There is so much more to it than just that surface level of understanding, and today I would like to help you better understand environmental storytelling and its complexities, specifically within the context of Five Nights at Freddy's. Whether you're a hardcore FNAF fan or newer to the series, I'm positive that you'll learn something new today. Now, to answer my own question, what is environmental storytelling? Coming up with an exact definition is tricky, but I think I've got a pretty good one. Environmental storytelling, using a game's setting, locations, visuals, or ambience in order to portray elements of a narrative. It can be used to show any portion of the story, no matter how big or small. Character behavior, motivations, dates, timeframes, and much, much more can be displayed using this method. Now that we know what environmental storytelling is, I would like to take you on a deep dive of how Five Nights at Freddy's uses it within the overarching narrative of the series. It has become far more utilized in more recent entries, and a lot of people could be missing crucial details because they don't know how exactly to look for these kinds of clues. To keep this video a somewhat reasonable length, I will not be going over every single little use. Rather, I've picked a few from each game to show examples. With that long intro out of the way, let's start from the very beginning. FNAF 1 obviously made the foundation for the series as a whole, including the use of environmental storytelling. The most basic use here is the building itself. Freddy's is run down, spiderwebs and trash are scattered in the office, the walls are rotting, the building appears as though it's been unused for years. This is used to imply where the game fits into the timeline. The location is already shut down while you're working there. This one is actually farther supported by another clue within the environment. On camera 4B, the east hall corner, there can sometimes be newspaper clippings that appear on the wall here. These tell a story on their own about the events that happened before you work there. It tells of the missing children's incident, someone eventually getting convicted for it, the animatronics starting to smell, the bodies never found, and finally, the place closing down after struggling for years. It's insane that Scott was doing this kind of stuff even in the very first game. The final thing I want to talk about for FNAF 1 is this endoskeleton that's in the backstage area. Why is this guy significant? Well, during the night one phone call, phone guy says this.
If they happen to see you after hours, probably won't recognize you as a person. They'll most likely see you as a metal endoskeleton without its costume on.
If what he said was indeed accurate, then why would the animatronics go through all the effort to get to you when there's a perfectly bare endos that's way easier to get to? It's another seemingly small detail that actually reveals a lot about the real nature of what's going on at Freddy's Pizzeria. FNAF 2 doesn't utilize environmental storytelling quite as much as most other entries, but there are a few interesting details, mostly about the building itself. The larger scale from the first game implies that Fazbear is more successful during the events of the second game. Furthermore, the design choices for the office give off pre-FNAF 1 vibes. Why is this the case? There's no doors, and it's overall just a very open and rather insecure space, a stark contrast to the first game. To me, that helps to imply that FNAF 2 takes place before the animatronics were found out to be dangerous. This game also introduces us to the 8-bit minigames that are now a staple of the series. They also tell us a story, Purple Guy, the bodies of the children, the origin of Freddy's in general. These short games are filled to the brim with details that can be considered environmental storytelling. While less than the first game, there are still strong uses in the second. FNAF 3, on the other hand, has a lot of examples about the topic of today's video, some of which are quite obscure. This first one I didn't even realize until researching for this video. Fazbear Frights is a crowded building, with lots of arcade machines, boxes, speakers, etc. Because of all that junk, it's really hard to find Springtrap in a lot of the cameras in that game. The attraction itself was created around the fact that Springtrap is an actual adult man with the mental capacity to know about the cameras and to hide from them. The environment is being utilized to show off his intelligence, making Springtrap feel like a much more threatening and alive enemy than any of the animatronics we have seen up to this point. The next example is much more straightforward. The scattered parts of all the previous animatronics show the player that this game is long after the first two games. This detail is made obvious in other parts of the game too, but the environment really sells the fact that Fazbear Entertainment has been out of commission for a significant amount of time during the events of FNAF 3. The hidden 8-bit minigames, like FNAF 2, also have a few things to point out, the first being Stage 01. This one shows that Fredbear's was a way smaller location than anywhere else in the series to that point. The most interesting thing in these games though is the Happiest Day. The character masks that the kids wear here show that Fazbear had a bunch of characters back in the day, some of which we haven't seen since and some of which were featured in future games. FNAF 3 is when these games really start to pick up with environmental storytelling. FNAF 4 is different from the first three games in many ways, but it still features a lot of examples of environmental storytelling. The minigames, again, teeming with tiny but important details, the empty room in the Afton house being a major example, another one being the Fredbear and Friends show with the date of 1983 attached to it. The next two details play into each other. First, the layout of the house. It literally makes no sense. What real-life house have you ever seen look like this? The reason for the odd layout makes sense when you remember that this game is a dream of sorts. The house isn't real, not the way that we see it in-game anyways. It's just a child's nightmare, an exaggeration designed to make the house unsettling. That one is further backed up by the final detail for this game, the bedside items. Rarely, when you check your bed, 3 different items can appear on the left side. These items are a pot with flowers, a pill bottle, and an IV bag, all things that someone would have next to them in a hospital bed, if they happen to be in a coma or just sick in general. Side note, if you're way too deep into FNAF lore like me, you might be typing some kind of comment about the nightmare gas from that one book with the FNAF 4 bedroom. That's great and everything, but come on, that explanation is the dumbest shit ever. It makes things far more complicated than they need to be. FNAF 4 is in the crying child's coma. Sister Location is next, and with it, plenty more examples of environmental storytelling. The length of the elevator ride each night, as well as the caution tape in front of the vent you enter, just show how little thought was put into this place. This is a secret bunker after all. Safety wasn't exactly on Afton's mind when building it. It's another look into Afton's crazed killer personality, putting his experiments first and safety dead last. Next is quite simple, the Ennard mask. If you didn't know, it actually vanishes on night 5. Besides being creepy and everything, it foreshadows Ennard's reveal later that night. This last one is a personal theory of my own. Circus Baby's gallery is special in this game. Obviously she's in there, but that's not why I say it's special. Think about how separated and isolated her room is from the rest of the animatronics. This separation gives her more importance from an environmental perspective, distancing her from the rest of the cast. It also implies Afton showing more care to this robot in particular, which makes sense considering its dark past. That one is just my theory, but I think it's a pretty good one. FNAF 6, or Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, doesn't use significant amounts of environmental storytelling. That doesn't mean there's nothing here though. First, the design of the office. Who the hell designed this place, dude? We all know that FNAF 6 is just a fake to get all the animatronics in one place, but I mean, come on, Henry. You could have made it just a little more convincing instead of shoving the office in a dangerous vent. Another detail is the inclusion of certain animatronics. Remember the Happiest Day from FNAF 3? This game is confirming that these characters are, in fact, older Fazbear characters. I personally think it implies that Henry designed the mediocre melodies and they're now being reused to fake out the pizza place in FNAF 6. Whatever the case, this game is one of the weaker ones in the series, when it comes to environmental storytelling anyways. The game itself is actually one of my favorites. Skipping FNAF AR and the absolute monstrosity that that game is, that brings us to Help Wanted. Now this one, like every FNAF game, is complicated. As you know, this one brings back a lot of the previous titles, the only difference being that it's in VR. While this makes for a super scary experience, it leads to a lack of new environmental storytelling. A lot of the old stuff is here for sure, but I already talked about those. It's not completely bare of new stuff though. The very last game you unlock here, Pizza Party, is a stunning example. It's a mix of every environment you play through during Help Wanted. This is huge for the lore. It's showing that the game is beginning to mimic, rather than just being something that was programmed into this in-universe VR game. That's it for the base game, but this game has a DLC, the lobby for it being a load of environmental storytelling. Curse of Dreadbear introduces us to Fall Fest, specifically the Fall Fest of 1983. In the background, the FNAF 4 house sits on a distant hill. Fall Fest has become a major plot point, and this very lobby introduced it to us for the first time. Besides that though, there's not too much more to say for Help Wanted. Security Breach is a turning point in terms of today's topic. This game is massive, and there are so many tiny hidden details in it, some of which have never been solved to this day. I could make a whole video about just this game, and it would be longer than all of the former games combined. However, I want to keep this video as concise as possible, so I'm only going over a few of the bigger points here. The scale of the Mega Pizzaplex shows you just how big Fazbear Entertainment has become. I guess that VR game was unbelievably successful. I mean, this place is huge. You can get lost, mostly because the map is useless in this game, but still. Next up is the animatronics. If you didn't know, they get dirtier throughout the night. It's a cool detail, and it shows that they're still active and doing stuff even when you're not near them. What are they doing to get so damn dirty? I have no idea. The sticky note room. Yeah, so this room is insane and has a lot of meaning behind it. Combine that with the replica Afton family located in the same area, and it's definitely hinting at something. This isn't a lore video. Maybe I should make a full timeline someday though. The daycare room is crazy too. Someone living back there without being noticed is kinda hard to believe, until you remember that Fazbear Entertainment is super reckless. Also, the hidden room in the pirate ship is another example of this. Security Breach has a lot of this little stuff, but I covered the heavy hitters of this game, so let's move on. Ruin is a DLC for Security Breach, yet it feels like a whole different game. The whole game is environmental storytelling hints. The opening shot includes a newspaper talking about an earthquake. The Vanny mask literally brings you back to when things were different, showing hints of the past. The biggest example of the topic at hand is the whole story of Glamrock Bonnie. First, you take a ride on the gondola.
I'm on the gondola! Okay?
In Monty's Gator Golf. This ride shows you Fazbear's cover-up story for how Bonnie disappeared and got replaced by Monty. He willingly left the band according to the ride, but everyone knows by now that Fazbear is run by a bunch of dirty little liars. Later, you find a poster of Freddy and Bonnie. It shows how close they were. If you managed to deactivate all of the wet floor bots, and you weren't playing on release night, you can enter a secret area, revealing what really happened. This relatively short experience of a DLC actually has a lot to it, and tells a far more understandable story than its base game through the environment alone. The second to last game on the list today is another VR game. This one is way different from the first though, having many more unique mini games. The ones to focus on for this video are Phaser Blast and the Carousel level. These all take place in Fall Fest. It's weird that these VR games have such a connection to Fall Fest. Anyways, they show that there was a fire at one of the Fall Fest events, the significance of this unknown currently. Princess Quest 4 is one of the best things that's ever come out of FNAF, and it turns out it also has environmental storytelling. The graves being numbered shows us the order of the MCI, as well as Charlie's death, which are both major events in the lore. This game also had a bunch of tiny things in it, but I don't want to keep you here forever. Finally, we have Into the Pit, the most recent release in the FNAF universe, which actually doesn't have a whole lot. There's definitely stuff here, like the calendar dates and the differences between the modern era and the 80s pizzeria. The thing I want to talk about though is this room. Why is the plane from the movie here? Why did they do that? What's it doing here? Why does Oswald not say a single thing about it? Why does nobody care about this thing being here? I really need to make a timeline video someday. This series is gonna drive me crazy. Five Nights at Freddy's has had so many more examples of environmental storytelling than just what I presented here, but hopefully with your newfound understanding of the topic, I encourage you to go play these games again and find your own examples. Who knows, maybe you'll find the next big hint that we've all been missing for the lore. If you do find something big, feel free to message me on Discord about it or leave a comment and you might see it in a video someday. Welcome to the true end of the video. If you watched this far and you're still watching, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. It means that hopefully you enjoyed this video and that I did good with it. If you think I did good with it, please like and subscribe because that would, help me out a lot, obviously. And it lets me know that people are enjoying stuff and it makes me want to make more stuff. A quick update on other projects that are going on. My new SFM is going great and should be ready sometime early next year. I'm thinking the very end of January. That's it for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you all next time.